Meeting. Dan's not here yet. I know it took me an hour to come down from Manchester this morning. I was hoping to talk to Gord about getting the north part open by Thursday morning for the Canadian Open. By the way, it's underway. The weather forecast is amazing. And they were dreaming to sell 100,000 tickets, and they sold 120,000 tickets. So it's going to be a busy, busy place this week, and particularly on our 400 series highways. Okay, I'll call the meeting to order. Members of the public are advised that our meeting is webcast live by the City of Hamilton and temporarily archived on the city's website. Other individuals in the meeting may also be audibly or visually recording this meeting. All electronic devices are to be switched to an unaudible function during the committee meeting. There are no ceremonial activities today. And Madam Clerk, are there any changes to the agenda?
Yes, Mr. Chair, there are changes to the agenda. We have an added notice of motion, item 12.1, respecting an appointment to the Waste Management Advisory Committee. I've also received an added presentation for item 9.1, which is included in the addendum package before you.
Let's see what 9.1 is. Okay. Okay, may I please have a mover and a seconder to approve the agenda? Moved by Marula, seconded by Farr. Electronic vote. Mr. Whitehead? Okay, and that carries. Any declarations of interest? Seeing none, let's move on to the approval of the minutes of the previous meeting. May I have a mover and a seconder to approve the minutes of the May 13th meeting? Moved by Pauls, seconded by Danko. All in favor? Electronic vote. And that carries. Let's move on to item 5, which is communications. There is correspondence from Julie Twyford respecting truck traffic on residential streets in Hamilton. I need a mover and a seconder to receive and refer the correspondence to the Truck Route Subcommittee. Moved by Whitehead, seconded by Pearson. All in favor? Carried. Let's move on now to delegation request. Is that electronic vote, Madam Clerk?
Yes, Mr. Chair, this one is electronic vote since we're referring it to another committee.
Okay. We have a delegation request under 6.1 from Benjamin Torres Culloch, McMaster Engineering Society. They want to pull a bus down the road. And okay. Yeah, do you still want to do? Do you want to have a discussion on 6.3? You want to lower the lake levels by digging the bay deeper? Really? Okay, so we have a mover to approve all 6.1, 6.2, 6.3, 6.4. Can we do that, Madam Clerk, all in one crack?
Yes, Mr. Chair, you can.
Okay, so all in favor? Oh, moved by Whitehead, seconded by Farr. All in favor, electronic vote. That carries. Item 7.1 is Keep Hamilton Clean and Green. Are there any questions respecting item 7.1? If not, I'll take a mover of it. Moved by Pearson, seconded by Whitehead to receive the item. All in favor? Thank you. Let's move on. No public hearings or delegations. Let's move on to staff presentations. And I'd like to call upon Linda Campbell, Superintendent of Utilities, to present item 9.1. Linda, the podium is yours.
Good morning. Thank you for having us here to present the results of the 2018 Annual Energy Report. The intent of this presentation is to highlight the key ideas.
Can you get the microphone right over to you?
Sorry. Okay. The intent of this presentation is to highlight the key ideas of the report and perhaps clarify any questions or concerns that you may have on the information. The annual energy report for 2018 is intended as a detailed review of the past 12 months of activities as they relate to energy usage, costs, energy performance, procurement efforts, and conservation initiatives for corporate assets. We also include the greenhouse gas emission reductions and inventory report for the 2017 calendar year. The report is set up so that the first 25 pages or so provide an overview at a high level of all the key performance indicators that we track. In the appendix, we provide the KPIs in their basest form so that groups interested parties can see how we came up with those numbers. If they choose, they can explore and compare them to other facilities within the portfolio or even against other overall corporate results. The City of Hamilton first created the corporate energy policy in 2007 with the goal to establish a guideline for best practices in energy efficiency and conservation initiatives and for setting targets and standards for the city's own corporate assets to reduce energy efficiency results. Reduce energy intensity and GHGs. A series of policies was established in the corporate energy policy to provide a set of guidelines and protocols to assist in the making of decisions relative to energy equipment, processes, systems, and activities. In 2014, the policy was updated to include fuel and transit consumption policy in Hamilton Water, as well as streamline the guidelines and policy actions to further support energy-related changes and improvements. The goals are to reduce energy consumption, mitigate rising costs, reduce greenhouse gas emissions, make greener equipment choices, and promote the use of best practices in building operation. One of the key performance measures for the city is the energy intensity reduction targets established within the corporate energy policy. Energy intensity is the measurement of consumption in equivalent kilowatt hours per square foot of conditioned space. Conditioned space refers to the usable, occupied space of a site, and not simply the square footage of the overall site. An example would be measuring a building within a park. We don't measure the entire park, we measure simply the conditioned space in the building. Another example is street lighting and traffic lighting. Both use electricity, but there is no building footprint. So although efforts are taken to reduce consumption by implementing energy efficiency measures, actions may act as mitigation for even higher usage. There was increased usage overall in buildings, largely impacted by the hotter summer and cooler winter. Energy intensity increased 3.8% when compared to 2017. However, it was a 25% reduction when compared to the base year of 2005. This slide represents a sample of energy intensity by property for EMS and fire. Citywide, the intensity of all buildings is 34.3 equivalent kilowatt hours per square foot, and this group's EMS and fire facilities are averaging 37.4 equivalent kilowatt hours. This is likely because those buildings would be operating at a 24/7, so they would consume more. Further details on energy intensity are under the performance section on page 11 of this report, and in the appendices of the report, you will find all of the results for the corporate buildings by group. We break our energy strategies and programs into 3 groups: utility rates and commodity strategies, cost recovery, energy conservation, and incentive programs. In the 2018, savings and avoided costs from these programs were in total $9.9 million. The yellow line on our graphic depiction shows that we paid in utilities monthly, and the black line shows what we would have paid had no action been taken. Utility rates and commodity strategies give us the results of our global adjustment peak performance results, $6.4 million for 2018, and the hedging strategy and activity that we benchmark against AMO's natural gas program results in savings of $530,000. Cost recovery is comprised of amounts we are able to recover from billing or rate corrections and fuel tax recoveries. In 2018, the total of this was approximately $220,000. In energy conservation, so savings achieved from energy efficiency projects, more efficient equipment, uses less commodity. We achieved $2.5 million in avoided costs on utilities, and on 2018 projects, we received approximately $323,000 in incentives. In 2018, the city spent $41.7 million on electricity, natural gas, and vehicle fuels. This is a 1% decrease from 2017. We measure costs incurred by city-owned buildings, sites, and exclude City Housing Hamilton. Sites that are linked to the district energy system with costs from HCE are included in both electricity and natural gas calculations. The fuels that are included in our report are diesel, unleaded gasoline, and compressed natural gas for all transit and fleet operations, but do not include Hamilton Police or DARTs. Some of our sites may also be included if we only have partial data for them. Exclusion may be decided because the site is being renovated, demolished, or sold partway through the year. Electricity consumption across corporate portfolios showed a very slight increase of less than 1% over 2017. Although the continued array of energy efficiency projects and peak day reduction activities have helped to mitigate increases to consumption, summer temperatures in 2018 heavily impacted electrical consumption for many sites. The cooling degree days, which are a measure of how much in degrees and how many days for how long, the outside temperature was higher than a base temperature. And these were 67% higher in 2018 versus 2017, and 35% higher than the 5-year average. Electricity costs were $24.6 million in 2018, which is 6.5% lower than 2017. One of the major reasons costs decreased was the introduction of Ontario's Fair Hydro Plan in the summer of 2017. So for 2018, the city's electricity costs benefited from a full year of reduced rates under the rate relief program. Natural gas consumption for 2018 was higher by 4.6% over 2017. Heating degree days were 9% higher in 2018 compared to 2017, but in line with the 5-year average. Natural gas costs were $3.9 million, a slight 0.2% increase over 2017. One reason costs did not increase despite the increase in consumption is due to the repeal of Ontario's cap and trade program. The charge of approximately 3.4 cents per M3 of use was removed in October 2018. The city has also benefited from relatively stable natural gas costs because of the disciplined hedging strategy purchases of natural gas on the wholesale market. In addition to reporting on the city's corporate facilities, there is also the city's large fleet of corporate vehicles. The fleet includes a variety of vehicle types such as buses, waste collection vehicles, snow removal trucks, street sweepers, department vehicles, fire and EMS vehicles. The fuels used are diesel, unleaded gasoline, and compressed natural gas. The KPI measurement indicator is the corporate average fuel economy, CAF, which is the amount of fuel consumed in diesel liter equivalent per 100 kilometers of distance traveled. The long-term goals are to reduce the CAF by 20% by 2030 as compared to the base level. The base year for CAF is 2012. As of 2018, there is a 3% reduction as compared to the base CAF level. Fuel costs were $13.2 million in 2018, which is a 14.5% increase over 2017. In 2018, the city used 9.1 million liters of diesel fuel. That's a 2% reduction from 2017. The average cost per liter was an increase of 17% compared to 2017. The city used 2.2 million liters of unleaded gasoline, a 5% increase over 2017. The average cost per liter was an increase of 11% over 2017. The purchase of CNG increased in 2018 by 22% compared to 2017, with a total of 5.1 million diesel liter equivalent. The primary reason is the increase in CNG-fueled buses in Transit's fleet. The CNG bus fleet increased by 35 buses from 85 in 2017 to 120 in 2018. The bus fleet overall increased from 251 vehicles in 2017 to 267 vehicles for 2018. Energy conservation projects are one of the initiatives the city uses to help achieve reductions in energy usage, energy intensity, and GHG emissions. Making upgrades to existing buildings or adopting emerging energy efficiency technologies in new facilities can improve operational efficiencies and cost effectiveness. The city tracks the energy savings from the projects once they are complete. The 2018 energy savings contribution from projects was $2.5 million, with $323,300 in incentives for a total of $2.8 million in conservation savings. Cumulatively, since 2005, the value of conservation is $31.3 million in project savings and incentives. More details on projects can be found in the report starting on page 16. In the report, we also have a listing of upcoming projects for 2019. Benefits of energy conservation projects extend beyond reducing energy usage, improving efficiency, and lowering operating costs. They also reduce GHG emissions. Going forward, projects that lower emissions will further enhance the clean and green strategic priority as the city responds to a growing concern around meeting climate change reduction targets at home, as well as the contribution to broader global initiatives. To date, the cumulative GHG reductions that have occurred because of energy conservation projects is 54,887 tons of CO2 equivalent. This is a further reduction of 2,562 tons compared to 2017. That's equivalent to 307 homes' energy use for the year. As I mentioned, we also have included the 2007 GHG emissions results. GHG emissions results related to corporate operations have been inventoried and reported annually since the adoption of the Corporate Air Quality and Climate Change Strategic Plan in 2008. Original targets of 20% reduction by 2020 were then updated and aligned with the Corporate Energy Policy and the Board of Health Climate Change Actions 2012 report, calling for an 80% reduction in GHG emissions by 2050 from the base year 2005. Reporting data for the GHG emissions report is 1 year behind the annual report. Therefore, the data presented here is the 2017 calendar year. In 2017, the GHG emissions inventory was 79,028 tons of CO2, carbon dioxide equivalent. This represents a 38% reduction from the base year and 5% reduction from 2016. Our corporate GHG emissions are generated by the following energy sources: electricity, natural gas, diesel, and gasoline. Of the above reported sectors, the largest emitter is vehicle fleet, with 34,671 tons of CO2 equivalent at 44%. For 2017, this is a 4% decrease to the base year and a 9% decrease from 2016. While 2017 is lower, the emissions for vehicles have varied over the years. Vehicles have become more efficient, and many of the buses have been switched to CNG, which has lowered emissions, CNG has lower emissions than diesel, but in general, the vehicle fleet size has actually increased. Corporate buildings makes up 30% of the total and is 49% less than the base year and 2% less than 2016. A large part of this reduction is the completion of energy efficiency initiatives at many corporate sites over the past several years. Some examples include LED lighting installations, BAS, so that's building automated systems, and equipment upgrades. Water and sewage, which includes the Woodward Water and Wastewater Plant, pump stations, wells, and reservoirs throughout the city, make up the third largest emission sector, with 11% of the total inventory for 2017. It is a 66% decrease from 2005 and a 5% decrease from 2016. Process efficiencies have had a large impact on this reduction. The water and sewage sector is the largest user of electricity in the city. Street lighting, although not a large overall emitter, has had an impressive reduction of 85% when compared to the base year. The LAMP program, which is the Lighting Asset Modernization Project, has made a large impact to both reducing electrical usage, but also in reducing its GHG emissions over the past 3 years. So several factors can impact the success of the energy programs and initiatives that the city measures each year. Regulatory changes, available funding, market factors, and budget constraints are among the biggest barrier to that success. The key is to keep targets in sight and focus on making strides to reduce the energy use and the environmental footprint of corporate facilities. Despite the difficulties in operating in an ever-changing energy environment, implementing energy conservation initiatives that improve efficiency, reduce consumption, and/or reduce emissions continue to be a priority. Having a framework like the Corporate Energy Policy is an effective guideline in championing energy-related programs. Meeting the targets laid out for reducing consumption and energy intensity, reducing GHG emissions, and improving the efficiency of the vehicle fleet requires behavioral changes and support from all levels of staff. The recent mayoral declaration to address climate change as an emergency priority in Hamilton shows commitment from the top and empowers staff to refocus efforts to endorse programs and projects that aim to reduce energy use, reduce corporate emissions, and improve the city's carbon footprint overall. And this concludes.
Okay, thanks very much, Linda. And I just want to confirm 2 things with you. Number one, since 2005, we've had a $31 million reduction in energy costs due to conservation. Did I hear that correctly?
Energy conservation, that's correct.
And
That's just in the energy conservation. That's in the projects that we've done. So that's savings to electricity costs. So if we had done none of those projects, we would have paid over, from the beginning, from 2007, $31.3 million more.
That's great results. Thank you to you and your team. And of course, I'd like you to send a copy of this report off to Environment Hamilton. We've already, in the last 5 years, had a 55,000-ton reduction in greenhouse gases, if I'm reading this report correctly. It's true? Congratulations. So please send a copy off to Linda so she has that and the great progress we've already made. So I have 2 speakers so far. The first is John Paul Danko.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So just touching on Councillor Ferguson's remarks as well, our current energy intensity reduction is around 25% since we began. Is that right?
Through the chair, yes. That's
So we're looking at our targets. We're already slightly ahead of our targets, so that's great news. Looking at the financial side as well, I mean, obviously environmental strategies are good to do just because it's the right thing. But on the financial side, if I'm reading this right, just last year, we achieved $9.9 million in savings in 2018. And I think the cumulative total is even more impressive. In the past 12 years, a total savings of $78 million. That's amazing. So just some kind of comments on the report overall. I thought it was really interesting how our strategy, corporate strategy in the city, Hamilton, sort of follows the global trend in reducing both energy use and also greenhouse gases. So a lot of the targets or a lot of the projects that have led to reductions in energy usage are LED lights. Reading the project with the wastewater treatment plant, switching the motors over, that was an amazing example there, where just switching out some of the legacy equipment resulted in hundreds of thousands of dollars in savings. So it's interesting that we've been proactive in seeking out those new technologies and implementing them in our facilities. So moving forward, looking at, I think it's figure 18 with the percentage-wise of where our CO2 emissions are, it really stands out that the vehicle fleet seems to be the next big target there, along with corporate buildings. So can you maybe just comment a little bit on what we're planning in terms of the vehicle fleet and corporate buildings? Are those where we're going to target, and what's the next steps?
Through the chair. Through the chair. On the corporate fleet, we're in the process of revising our energy policy, and the revised energy policy will be coming in on early 2020. One of our targets and initiatives is to look at the fleet and how we can create a more greener fleet. So those are discussion items right now that we're working with our internal fleet group and our energy office.
And then on the facility side?
So on the facilities side, we work individually. We have project managers within our group that work with all of the various groups within the city, and they develop energy management plans, and they're sourcing out different projects that are available for energy efficiency. And when funding is approved and we have funding for them, we'll move forward with them. The list of the projects is included in the report for 2019, and all of those, again, some of those will be funded through all existing capital projects that we're working on, things that are, and all of those concerns will be taken into account.
Great, that's all my questions, and thank you for your overall commitment to energy reduction and greenhouse gas emissions reductions. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Jackson.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman, and Director Rome, D'Angelo, and Linda, and the entire team, Tom Chessman, excellent work. Appreciate the annual update and report. So mine is more about communication, Linda, and I usually ask this type of question after the annual energy reports every year. Both on the fiscal side, the 31 million we've saved, or if you will, cost avoidance, and on the climate emergency declaration that we recently went through. I'm wondering, how are we not necessarily promoting, but how are we sharing and communicating these two very, very important messages to our community, Mr. Chairman? Through you to Linda for a comment, please, and or through your Director, D'Angelo.
Okay, so through the chair,
Go ahead, Linda.
we are actually focused, our office is focused on corporate assets. We don't actually focus on the corporate, but we do work very closely with those in climate air qualities, Trevor's group. They are aware of what we're doing, of the initiatives that we do, and they do include them in their reports and community facing projects.
Okay, thanks, Linda. So, Mr. Chairman, I don't know who to park this with, but I really feel that, if you recall, there were delegations here, and of course we can always do more to meet the climate change emergency across our world, across the globe, with greenhouse gas and energy use overall, with conservation consumption, reducing that and reducing greenhouse gases. But, Mr. Chairman, I truly feel that for the average citizen that were to attend, let's say, a town hall meeting of mine, I don't think that they are aware of, both from the fiscal side of how much taxes could have gone up more if we didn't have the 31 million over 10, 12 years of cost avoidance, and the wonderful work we are doing trying to do our best as a small municipality in this great big world we live in of what we're trying to do to meet climate change, reduce greenhouse gas, et cetera. So, Mr. Chairman, through you to whoever on management team, Rome, or Mr. Chairman, between yourself and maybe the new city manager and corporate communications, Director John Hertel, I just feel this is a twofold message, not to stop what we're doing, do even more, Linda, with the great work you're doing, and as you say, you're exploring other areas of the corporation. But I just think this is a message that is not resonating out there, Mr. Chairman.
It might be appropriate, Mr. or Councillor, to put a motion forward that we direct our communications staff to put a bulletin out to the community.
I'd be happy.
In addition to, I'd like to see it go to Environment Hamilton also, we can incorporate both in there.
Terrific, Mr. Chairman, thank you. Director D'Angelo or anybody else on leadership, senior leadership?
Through the chair, as I indicated earlier, we're in the process of renewing our energy policy. One of the items in there will be about communication and working very closely with our corporate communication and how we can message this out to the community. And as Linda indicated, our mandate is our corporate assets. As a corporation, we look internally of how we create those energy savings, conservation, and incentives. But in terms of messaging out, that's a great suggestion, and we will incorporate that into our energy policy and start working very closely with our corporate communication and make sure that it gets cascade beyond the corporation.
Thank you, Director. So, Mr. Chairman, at the appropriate time, I'll take you up on your suggestion. I think the political authenticity and support of what the bureaucracy is doing, I think let's embolden that message and get it more widespread out there. Thanks, Mr.
Back to you for the motion. Councillor Whitehead.
Yeah, can I, so when, as part of our I guess, our accounting practices and policies, we charge for space cost recovery. In that cost recovery, is the energy cost built into that piece as well?
Through the chair, no. The only costs internally are operating costs. Utility costs are direct, and they go directly to the end user. So as an example, if you look at all the fire halls, those costs, we manage the program from the energy office, but the actual utility cost goes direct to the end user.
Well, we don't do it in our own facilities. I'm just trying to understand, so when you're trying to change behavior, energy consumption, then you would think that the best policy is to ensure that the end user is accountable for the energies being utilized in some form or fashion through the cost recovery model. So if they don't experience any impact on the energy they consume, then the behavior is not necessarily adjusted accordingly. So help me understand what is the better approach to that?
Through the chair, so those charges go direct to the end user, so they're responsible and accountable for their usage. So any conservation or any impact on those facilities will hit them directly.
But that's not in all cases, I think I heard.
Through the chair, in most cases, like, so for example, City Hall, we have multiple users in this facility. That cost gets a portion based on the space that they use.
I appreciate that, thank you.
Okay, I have no more speakers, so I'm going to start first of all with a motion to receive the presentation. Moved by Pearson, seconded by Whitehead. All in favor? That's carried. Thanks very much, Linda. A seconder, mover, and a second to receive the report. Moved by Marula, seconded by Collins. All in favor? That's carried. And Councillor Jackson, you have a third motion for us. Wing it, yeah.
So, Mr. Chairman, I was going to move by myself. I can get a seconder that the director, Councillor Collins of Ward 5, that the director of facilities and the entire senior leadership team engage corporate communications and other avenues to ensure the fiscal and energy conservation messages are promoted and shared across our community.
Sounds wonderful. There's seconded by Councillor Collins. Discussion on the motion. Seeing none, all in favor? Electronic vote. Carries 9-0. You don't forget to add the part about Environment Hamilton too, okay? Okay, let's move on now to discussion items. 10.1 Is there any discussion regarding 10.1? Who moved it? Councillor Collins, seconded by Councillor Marula. Let's wait it.
Yeah, could I just ask staff, so I understand the report, and you covered the very issue that I was talking about when the motion first was brought forward, and that is our capital budget in regards to sidewalks. And I'm not sure, again, from a capital point of view, how sidewalks are prioritized. I've identified, certainly in my past term at council, in Ward 8, areas like Corpus Christi School, still urban cross-section, no sidewalks in that area whatsoever. So we still have urban cross-sections, no scenic, no sidewalks. So how do we prioritize the very little capital that we have where the sidewalks will go? Because, you know, this report is talking about a very lightly traveled area, not very low density compared to much higher density within the urban fabric with schools and churches. So I don't know how the prioritization works when we actually go in and do sidewalks, or we only do sidewalks when we're doing urbanization.
This report's back to us as a direction from council. That's why this one's back to us.
No, I understand that, Mr. But in the report, it talks about, unfortunately, it would have to go to a 10-year plan, which I clearly understand. I'm just asking for clarity on that 10-year plan, how sidewalks are prioritized.
Okay, a little off topic.
Well, it's not. It's in the report.
Does somebody want to take an attempt at answering that? Brian, do you want to take it? Or?
Through the chair, we are currently updating our prioritization process. So it's a real collective ownership example of transportation planning, identifying the gaps and opportunities for feasibility for implementation, and then we would feed it through to the transportation operations and maintenance division to do a prioritization exercise, which would include opportunities, again, to connect into schools and churches and pedestrian generators, which would then kind of create a list, which would then go into programming through asset management. So that is the process that we're currently refining, but because before, as you had mentioned, it was a little bit unclear. So we will be, we can come back and report back on what that prioritization system operates.
I appreciate that, because as a counselor, it's very difficult to understand what the metrics is to determine what is the priority and where sidewalks need to go with a very little capital in a 10-year plan. So I would hope to, at some point, see either an information report that identifies what the metrics is to help facilitate the priority in regards to building sidewalks in badly needed neighborhoods throughout the city. So thank you for that.
Yeah, I just have one question, quick question, I guess, to Brian, if you're the author of the report or signed the report. Why are you going all the way down to Glencaster Road when Tradeport's, their contract is to extend runway 624 and in fact close Glencaster Road, or close Airport Road? Why wouldn't the western limit be Kelowna Aircraft, which is the last big employer along that route?
I'll let Steve take that one.
Through the chair, the intent of that description is a little bit vague, but it would take into account the airport access road that would, again, with the extension of the runway, kind of go around the airport and then eventually connect into Glencaster. So although it wouldn't be a straight route, there would be a connection that would go through to Glencaster.
Do you really need a connection to Glencaster? I don't think they might walk down there and be the cows when they get out.
Through the chair, that was identified as part of the AEGD transportation master plan. So I can't speak to the details of that determination through that process, but that's where they had identified that connection.
Okay, it just seems strange you're going to put sidewalk in where nobody would walk in from. Do we leave it? Do we let it go, or do we amend it? Wait, I'm not getting any traction on this, so there is a motion, there is a report before you, and I need a mover and a seconder to approve the recommendation of the report. Councillor Pearson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Appreciate your question to Mr. Malloy, and I'm certainly hoping that staff will reevaluate, and I'm sure they do on every single project as they come forward and do the design works as to how far this has to go. So I'm sure we just need to leave it open, but at the time when we get there, and then we'll know what development's going on and everything else, we can make a more educated decision with regards to the process. So I trust that in staff's hands. Thank you.
Do you want to move the report then? Moved by Councillor Pearson, seconded by Councillor... Councillor Danko can second it. No more discussion, see no discussion, all in favor? Let's move on now to 10.2, which is Woodward Avenue Upgrade Project. Reports. I'm sorry? Oh, you're right. Okay. That carries 9-1. Let's move on now to 10.2, which is the Woodward Avenue Upgrade Project. There's a report before you. Is there any questions or discussion about it? Seeing none, a motion then to approve. Moved by Councillor Whitehead, seconded by Councillor Pearson. Further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? That carries 10-0. Let's move on now to the 10.3, which is proposals for waste management. Referral of delegations, rather than coming to Public Works, would first go through the Waste Management Subcommittee. Any questions or discussions about it? Moved by Councillor Whitehead, second by Councillor Pearson. Councillor Jackson.
So, Mr. Chairman, now that I've gotten more excited about alternative technologies of waste, all right, tongue-in-cheek a bit there, thank you. Anyways, Mr. Chairman, I take it this may have been spawned from the somewhat contentious delegation that appeared a couple of months ago here. So just, Mr. Chairman, through you to Director Murdoch, is this the result of that? And is this now a process that doesn't necessarily impede or doesn't compromise the current RFPs, both now and moving forward? But this is a process now that anyone from alternative technology companies can now apply to appear before the advisory committee. Maybe just a summary comment from the director. Mr. Chairman, through you.
Through the chair, Councillor, there was several questions in your statement there. So the first, to answer your question why it's before you, it came as a result of a motion that was brought forward to committee and council from Councillor Danko, and it was defeated, and staff were asked to come forward with a report that clarified the process. The process that we're recommending is, yes, you are correct, that a person that is wishing to do a delegation will first be referred to the Waste Management Advisory Committee. And if the delegation has benefits to the city, staff will be directed to report back to the Public Works Committee when they have all information from the delegate. If the presentation is only to be received, then the information from that delegate will be in the minutes from the Waste Management Advisory Committee, and those minutes will come forward to Public Works Committee.
So thank you, Craig, for the two-part answer. So, Mr. Chairman, on the second part, so let me just hypothetically, someone appears before the advisory, request to appear through clerks before the advisory committee. They do. Our advisory committee, I believe, is made up of a mix of some of my colleagues and citizen appointees. That advisory committee hypothetically will determine if then there is merit to having staff to further investigate and report back, or flush that out a little more clearly for me, Craig, please. Mr. Chairman, through you.
Through the chair, information will come back regardless to this committee. If the information is to be received, it will come forward in summary form along with their presentation to the Public Works Committee. If the information has potential for it to be implemented or researched further by staff or implemented by the city, it will be reported back to Public Works Committee as a separate report under the direction of the Waste Management Advisory Committee.
So the Waste Management Advisory Committee could potentially make recommendations after hearing an alternative technology presentation. They potentially could make a recommendation to the department to make that recommendation to Public Works Committee. I just want to be crystal clear on this, Craig, as you can appreciate. I don't want to lead anybody down a confusing road, if you will. Mr. Chairman, through you.
Question.
Through the chair, no, they will not be making recommendations. They will be directing staff to report to the Public Works Committee, which will contain the recommendations for consideration by committee and council.
Okay. I think this is a good first step, Mr. Chairman, and keeps potentially future options open down the road for our municipality. And Councillor Danko was the one who at least triggered it after that somewhat contentious debate, so I'm grateful.
I
Thanks.
feel like we can call it the Jackson motion. No, let's not do that. Okay. Okay, so there's no, Councillor Marula.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And just to clear up any confusion regarding what advisory committees are all about, they are to provide advice that we take under advisement, but they have no tangible bearing with respect to action. And even throughout the process of selecting members of those advisory committees, there's a distinct question that's asked. You know the difference between an advisory member and an advocacy member, and if you answer the question properly, you get selected. And some people don't seem to understand what that process is or what that actually means. So perhaps we should do a formal in-service to all the advisory committee members about what their role is and what their expectations are with respect to any recommendation that they bring forward, because it's simply something we take under advisement, not that we act upon immediately or as a result of their action. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So I have no other speakers, and so Councillor Jackson, you're moving the report, seconded by Councillor Pearson, the vice chair or the chair of the subcommittee. All in favor, we need electronic vote. And that carries. Let's move on now, 10.4, which is the South Coast Road Municipal Class Environmental Assessment. And Councillor Danko, can you just take the chair for this? I'll turn you on if you activate your mic. So is anyone here today? I see Gord is not here. Is anyone here that can speak to this matter today? Is Erica here?
Yes, I'm here.
Hi, Erica. So, Erica, two things that surprised me in the report. Number one is that you've got the northern limit now being Calder rather than the 403. How come?
So Calder is the limit because the bridge would need to be replaced.
Speak up, please.
Sorry, Calder is the limit because the 403 bridge would need to be replaced in order to continue the limits to golf links. But the limits of the project for the life cycle of the roadway and for the improvements is from Calder to Garner.
Because the 10-year plan, 10-year budget shows, I think it's 2022, to do from 403 to Garner.
Right, and that
This is the first time I've seen it pushed back to Calder.
so it was separated because of that bridge replacement with the 403. So that's an MTO initiative that we have to coordinate with. So that's why this project.
That bridge would have to be replaced then by the MTO?
We're not entirely sure of their plans, but in order to continue with the preferred alternatives, we would need to replace that bridge, or that bridge would have to be replaced.
Because it's already 2 lanes across the bridge with the bicycle lanes. And of course, you don't need a center lane because nobody's going to turn on the bridge. And so I'm still puzzled why you can't take it up to the 403 bridge.
So it goes to the limit of the 403 bridge, but not underneath it. So as far as continuity goes, we typically wouldn't remove the lane necessarily. So again, this is another design parameter that's outside the limits of the project that we looked at here.
So when engineering prepares the design for the construction of this, are they going to be paving up to the bridge, or they're stopping short?
We will be stopping short.
I don't understand why.
So there's no continuity for the pedestrian or cycling access on the east side of the bridge. That's why we're stopping where we are. Also, there's, again, the coordination piece with the MTO.
You're going to have a short piece then of Old Road
We,
in Calder and 403.
okay, so, sorry, the expansion of the roadway, including the new pedestrian and cycling facilities, will stop at the bridge. The paving will go, or will stop prior to the bridge. The paving will go up to the bridge, the new resurfacing of the road. But we won't be expanding the facility at that point.
Okay, I still don't understand that.
It may
I'm
be,
just worried this locks it down, and I won't have an opportunity to take this up with the engineering staff when they design it, because this is a change.
if it helps, we may be able to send you the drawing of what's happening. That'll better give you a visual of what's going to happen there.
That may be a good idea. Can I get it before council so I can put an amendment in
Absolutely.
if it's necessary? My second question is, at both public information centers, the main issue for the residents was putting the hydro underground. I don't see anything about that here, and that was a significant part of the environmental assessment. What is the recommendation on that?
So the preferred recommendation for the road is preferred regardless of whether or not we are able to bury the lines or not. We are still waiting on the cost estimate from Ontario Hydro to come back so that we can make that determination.
We could still go ahead with and register this environmental assessment without knowing that?
We can, because the preferred alternative can be completed in either case, whether or not we bury the lines.
Okay, so the message back to the community is we don't know yet.
We still don't know.
Okay, I'll take the chair back if I can, please, Councillor Danko. So the recommendation is before you. I will support it, but I may be amending it at council and when I find out why they shortened it once Erica sends me the drawings. So would someone like to move it? Moved by Pearson, seconded by Danko. All in favor, electronic vote. That's carried. Item 10.5 is the replacement of the SCADA system for the central composting facility, and is to go to a sole source procurement on this. Any comments or questions, Councillor Danko?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So just for my clarity, that the recommendation is for a sole source. The estimated value of the project is $500,000, correct? Through you?
Greg?
Through the chair, 500,000 is the upset limit. We're not allowed to talk to vendors before, for the purposes of getting quotes, because then we would be non-compliant with the procurement policy. So we estimate high.
Okay. The overall recommendation to go to sole source, from what I read, is mainly because Maple Reinders is currently involved with the project, and they would have the expertise to build and install this SCADA system. Can you maybe elaborate on that a little bit, the justification for the sole source?
Justification covers multiple things. The main one being that the composting process, the aerobic composting process, is proprietary for our facility. So the SCADA system that's there now was built for the system. Maple Reinders has built 5 of these facilities across Canada, and they use the same system. Anybody that would be programming a SCADA system has to have intimate knowledge of the programming and the processes. And if you don't have the knowledge of the processes, the programming could be problematic. And one of the risks of doing that, if we had a company that wasn't familiar with the processes, is that we could have a process upset, and that could lead to odors. So given that we have high sensitivity for the community and odors, and we're trying to rebuild the trust in the city of Hamilton for this facility, we thought it was best that we go with Maple Reinders, who are the programmers of the original system. The other thing that I'd like to point out is that under the contract, Maple Reinders assumes risk for process upsets. And if we were to have another company come in and program the system that they're responsible for, we would put the city at risk for the remainder of the contract.
Could you elaborate on that a little bit? How would the city be at risk potentially if this was an open competition? Could that not be built into the procurement to make sure that we get what we need?
Sorry, to clarify, through the chair, to clarify what I meant is that the risk would be within the contract. So the contractual requirements that Maple has to meet with the City of Hamilton for the operation, the risk that they take from the Ministry of the Environment, Conservation and Parks, and any risks for the running of the facility and the process itself. They take on that risk now because they supply the SCADA system. If we had a third party supply the SCADA system, then they would not be responsible for those risks within the contract.
And
Danko?
through the procurement process, we wouldn't be able to specify exactly what we need to mitigate those risks?
Through the chair, essentially what we would have to do through the specifications is say that they have to have intimate knowledge of the Maple Grinders proprietary process, which really eliminates everybody except Maple Grinders.
Would there not be similar systems that another proponent would be familiar with that would be compatible? And understanding that Maple Grinders would have a competitive advantage?
Through the chair, we're only aware of one other system in Canada that uses the similar technology. It's not the same technology. Maple Grinders may not be open to letting them see their proprietary processes because the other system that's out there is their direct competitor.
Okay, so my initial intention then was to move the alternative to go to a competitive bid process. But from your answers, I think with the risk and some of the issues that we've had with the composting facility and the proprietary process, I'll leave it at the recommendation as it is in the report for now, and I'll give that some further thought when we come to council.
Any other speakers? Are you moving it then?
Sure. Yeah.
Okay, seconded by Councillor Pauls. Okay. All in favor? That carries. Let's move on now to the new septic waste haulage receiving station. It's before you. Are there any discussions or questions regarding it? Councillor Jackson.
Thanks, Chairman Ferguson. Through you to either Senior Director Andrew Grice or Director Mark Bainbridge, who I actually met with, if I recall, after the election last November, shortly after the municipal election, met with Mark and Bert Badowski in my office to discuss this. So since I haven't met with them since, and the report here is before us, moving along towards the 30-day review period of the environmental assessment process, and not just for myself, Mark, but maybe for the edification of the Public Works Committee. Mr. Chairman, through you to Mark. This is about, if approved, this is about closing down the, if you will, older facility on Kilbride Avenue near Nebo Road. I'll do question by question first. Mr. Chairman, through you.
Through the chair, that's absolutely right, Councillor Jackson. Yes, the intent is for the new station to replace the existing facility at Kilbride.
Okay, thanks, Mark. Secondly, this new facility then for my colleagues will be on Dartnell Road, just south, let's see here, let me get my bearings straight, south of the SPCA facility on the same side. Mr. Chairman, through you.
Mark.
Through the chair, correct.
Okay, and this is land that we either owned, Mark, or got into some form of negotiation, purchase and sale with whoever the private investor was, and if you don't need to divulge privacy information, that's fine, but just maybe clarify that point, please, in terms of the land that the site that you're landing on.
Through the chair, this is the proposed site, and we're still in advance of the land acquisition process. That's still to come.
Okay. Also, Mr. Chairman, through you to Mark. So, Mark, if this gets all approved and you're all set to go, this facility for the sewage haulage that currently has come up to locations like Kilbride will go to this new location on Dartnall between the power lines and 20 Road up that way on the east side. This building will be more of a state-of-the-art, cleaner, hopefully no odors whatsoever. Maybe give us some description, Mr. Chairman, of the building of this new facility. Mark, please.
Through the chair, certainly we heard some consultation with the public that brought forward issues, and you pointed out some of them. We are getting through the EA process, and we'll go into a full design, and that design will include an attempt to mitigate as much as possible those issues that were brought forward with us, in odor in particular.
Okay, and Mr. Chairman, lastly, Director, not naming any companies in the area, but in the proximity of Dartnall Road, Rymel 20, as you know, it's our prestigious, as it's known as, the Red Hill Commercial Park. And I just want to make sure, obviously, a facility like this is different than the type of commercial light manufacturing we try to entice, even union halls into the Red Hill Commercial Business Park. So what has been your communication strategy to ensure existing businesses will be aware of what's forthcoming, Mr. Chairman? Through you to Mark, please.
Mark?
Through the chair, we've gone through the normal EA process, which has included 2 PIC events that were open to the public. And thanks for your guidance and time in the past. We've taken your comments and interacted with 3 additional, I guess, interested stakeholders close to that location, and interacted with them specifically in an extended consultative type process with our consultant and with our staff to talk about the issues that they had on the top of their mind. And my understanding, those conversations were very productive, and everyone went away happy with the information that was shared. As we move into the 30-day process, they will have again an opportunity to offer their commentary and contribute to the process, and that 30-day window, if they wish to take that, that will be available to them as well. So,
Thank you, Director, for taking some of my comments under advisement on the communication side, Mr. Chairman. I'm very, very grateful. So, Mark, I'm set to support this, even though it technically says Ward 11, where it's going to land. It's right on the border there of Ward 6, and obviously I think most of the businesses and facilities currently would be more in my side of the Red Hill Business Park. So I'm grateful for keeping in touch with my office. So Mark, just to be clear, we approved this today, 30-day period, and if there's no objections in the future, you then simply move ahead to implement and construct, or is there one last report coming back to Public Works, Mr. Chairman, through you?
through the chair, I think we will advise council that we're through the 30-day window successfully, and then we'll move into the design.
Okay, so one more report back, Mark. Hopefully it's successful, and then you can, with committee and council's endorsement, move full steam ahead. Correct?
Correct.
Thank you, Director Bainbridge. I'm happy to move it at the appropriate time, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Okay, so just so we're clear, Mark, when the honey wagons currently come up and discharge the load, they drape a hose down a manhole, do they not? And then with the new system, they'll actually have a physical connection, which we able to significantly reduce odors that way, correct?
Through the chair, yes, we can design to mitigate the odors as much as possible with direct connections.
Be a direct connection, so there's nothing open to the atmosphere. Okay, so Councillor Jackson, you're moving that motion? Seconder? Second by Councillor Pauls. All in favor? Electronic vote. That carries. Let's move on to motions. Item 11, Councillor Collins, you want to introduce your motion?
So thanks, Mr. Chairman, and it's the resurfacing of Galbraith and 2nd Street North, and these are coming out of reserves for the ward. I just have one question for staff, and I know that we're reaching that point where things may or may not happen this calendar year. I just wondered, there are no curbs here, there are no sidewalks. I just wondered whether this work is still eligible to be done this calendar year, or does it get bumped to next year? If I could just ask very quickly.
Through the chair, the resurfacing of Galbraith will happen next year, in 2020.
And same holds true for second then, as well?
Yes.
All right, thank you. So moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Marula.
Okay, I don't have any requested speakers. All in favor? Electronic vote? Okay, we'll move on to 11.2. Councillor Pauls, do you have a motion?
Okay, it's moved by myself and second by JP Danko, and it's the extension of contract C-15-23-18P relating to Churchill Park, Hamilton, Ward 1, Councillor Maureen Wilson. I won't read the whereas, so we'll go, if that's okay, go right to therefore it be resolved that $45,000 be allocated from the Ward 1 Area Rating Reserve Account number 108051 to the Churchill Park Project ID number 44010566127 for the purpose of extending contract C-15-23-18 to complete the soil removal works, and that council approves the single source procurement pursuant to procurement policy number 11, non-competitive procurement for the additional scope to complete the soil removal works at the upset limit of $45,000, and that the general manager of the Public Work Department be authorized to negotiate and amend the contract C-15-23-18 B, and any ancillary documents required to give effect thereto with Metric Contracting Service Corporation in a form satisfactory to the city councillor.
Let's move by yourself and seconded by John Paul Danko. Yes. Discussions on it? Councillor Farr.
Through you, Chair, there's some Ward 2 ramifications here. We've already removed lots of soil from Churchill, clean soil, and we've piled it up over at Central Park where the planning for that redevelopment has now been postponed a year. And so what we have right now is a massive growing pile of clean Churchill soil that we were going to use to grade. It was a win-win-win, actually. It was a great catch by Public Works and Engineering and Landscaping. But the fact that now Central is delayed, my concern with this motion is that that dirt pile, which is massive right now, and we know is going to sit all season, is going to grow and continue to sit. So if I could get through you from whoever on staff, an answer on where this soil is going to go, and is that hill at Central going to continue to grow?
See Cynthia Graham sitting here, so Cynthia,
Perfect.
you answer that?
Yeah, through the chair, the destination for this fill will be Pier 8.
Okay, so through you, Cynthia, sorry to put you on the spot, but we'll also have, we'll know actually officially this week, in all likelihood, some urgency for movement by a potential proponent, potentially, at Pier 8. Oh, sorry, that you said Pier 8. Sorry, I was thinking Barton Tiffany. Never mind, no second question. Good to know that it won't continue to grow as a pile at Central while that park is delayed, and I'll support the motion. Thank you.
Okay, so Councillor Whitehead.
In the motion, and I'm not familiar with the process, but I am familiar with governance. It says to the satisfaction of the ward councillor. Is it not the satisfaction of council?
Dan?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I think this is kind of a unique situation in that the design of the berm, the local residents, it was becoming difficult for them to enjoy the view, I guess, and that's why the motion was put forward, is to amend the shape of the berm and to remove some of that material. So I think the idea is that the local councillors working with the community to come up with a design that's acceptable.
So would it be should the wording be a little adjusted? I'm just, again, from a governance point of view, I can understand the input of the ward councillor. I don't understand to the liking of the ward councillor. That's not governance. We have the power here, not any one councillor. So help me understand the difference between input versus ultimate veto.
Through you, Mr. Chair, I'm not sure I can comment on that other than the fact that we would be working together. I think this, by approval of this motion, that would give the authority both to my staff and to the local councillor to come to an agreement on it. So I'm assuming from a legislative perspective that would work fine.
I'm just sticking with the governance perspective. I didn't realize that any one ward councillor had that much power. Great. If that's the new precedence, we'll start approving every project by ward council.
Okay, I have no other speakers, so electronic vote in this. All in favor?
Ward
It's okay. Okay, that carries. Let's move on now to notice of motion. Is it going to left as a notice, or is it coming forward today? Left as a notice? Okay, thank you. Item 13 then is amendments to the outstanding business list. Yes, Ms. Councillor Farr.
Two notices here that I will leave as notices. First is a commemorative designation of the corner of King Street East and Walnut Street to Gord Thompson Corner, whereas Gord Thompson was tireless as an advocate for International Village in downtown Hamilton. As a successful business leader operating Thompson Jewelry, Gord took great pride in beautification for his shop, and the area was well admired by customers and visitors over many decades. Therefore, be it resolved that the corner of King Street East and Walnut Street be formally dedicated as Gord Thompson Corner. And the second one I'll leave as a notice of motion, the feasibility of assisting major festivals, shut out of the 2019 Celebrate Ontario grant process for city services. Whereas the provincial government has failed to fund 3 major 2019 summer festivals in Hamilton through their Celebrate Ontario grant program, Festival of Friends, It's Your Festival, and Supercrawl. Whereas the lack of any provincial funding has negative effects that may include generally greatly downsizing these large outdoor festivals or even seeing them potentially canceled. And whereas traditionally, larger festivals pay for services rendered by our Public Works Department that include, but are not limited to, such measures as waste collection, road closures, HSR rerouting, lighting, etc. Therefore, be it resolved that the appropriate staff from Public Works report back on areas where and how much these larger festivals pay for Hamilton City services and highlight those services that Public Works Committee may consider to offer in kind as a means to continue to make these major Hamilton festivals viable. And I'm sorry for the late notice on both.
They're both notices, though, Councillor.
Yes, I'll leave them. Thank you.
Okay. Councillor Whitehead.
It's just a question, staff. There's a memorial, a military memorial up at Shadok that is in really tough shape. I'm not sure, I've been getting enough notices from a number of veterans, but I'm not sure who has responsibility for the maintenance of that particular memorial. So I just want to serve notice now, we'll follow up. But there's a lot of veterans now, even on Remembrance Day, they're, weather permitting, and it's because it's in that West Mountain area, choose to celebrate Remembrance Day there, and they've been sending a number of complaints about the state of the memorial at Shadok.
You're going to take this offline?
I'll take offline, I just wanted to serve notice. Thank you.
Okay, general information. There's a number of changes that are being proposed to the outstanding business list. You're moving them, Councillor Pearson, seconded by Councillor Pauls. All in favor, electronic vote. That's carried. There is no private and confidential. I do have a question of staff, though, on an issue. Maybe Councillor Danko, you want to take a chair? We may get into some discussion on this. So I was hoping Gord would be here, but he's not. And Dan, I saw an information update from Gord on Friday that the mainline paving on the northbound Red Hill should be finished last Friday night. And they're going to be focusing this week on the ramps. And it seems to me, well, first of all, you missed at the start. You're probably caught in traffic this morning like I was. It took an hour to get down here because the northbound is closed. But originally, the Gulf Canada was hoping a stretch target was 100,000 tickets sold. Well, they sold 120,000 tickets. So there's going to be a huge influx of visitors coming in here, and the congestion this morning on the 403 was unconscionable. It was back right up, I dipped around it, but it's back past Wilson Street. And so, is there any reason why come Thursday morning, we can't open up the main line, you just leave the ramp closed that they're working on if the main line is finished?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I'd have to circle back with Gord. There's still a tremendous amount of work that has to be done with the pavement markings, the guide rails, and a variety of the rumble strips. There's a variety of other things that have to happen now that once the paving's done.
Except in Gord's email, he said that the guardrails was expected to be complete probably today. The pavement markings, as you know, would probably take a few hours, and they're done. I just want to stress the importance of all these visitors coming in town. They get one chance for a first impression, plus the inconvenience to our citizens, our current citizens, with the congestion on the 403 and Centennial Parkway as a result of this closure. I know it's more convenient to pave the ramps when the road's closed. But it's creating a terrible inconvenience to our community and not a great first impression. So if the main line paving is finished, and if the guardrail is done, and if the line paintings are done, I'd like to have the public to understand why we can't open up the main line at least by Thursday morning for the start of the open.
I'm happy to get back to you on that.
Okay, I may want to go out with you and take a tour of it, just run down and see from my own eyes. I don't know how other committee members feel, but I think it's creating a horrible inconvenience to people who are on the escarpment, either on the mountain or Upper Stony Creek or Ancaster, trying to get down here. And I had the same problem on Garner Road last year, where they kept the road closed because they wanted to do seeding and mulching. We closed the road so they do a sewer 30 feet deep in wet sand, not so they can do topsoils and seeding. So if you're available, I don't know what your schedule's like. I'd like to run over there with you this morning and just take a drive down to see if there's something that we can do, because I think it'd be nice to under-promise but over-deliver on this to our community. I'll take the chair back then.
Yeah, I've sort of noticed on the West Mountain, Gar Street is now, since the closure, has become a parking lot. I think 3 mornings I give myself 35 minutes on normally a 12-minute drive, and I'm still just barely making it, or not even making it here on time. So it is a bumper. I could wait 5, 6 to 7 different queues just to get to the, probably even more than that, to get to Queen Street Hill lights. So there is clearly an impact, a noticeable one, as a result of what has transpired on the Red Hill, or unless there's another explanation. So it is the Canadian Open. So I fully endorse, if there's magic that we can perform, we should be performing it when the international eyes are upon us. Thank you.
Dan. Okay, that's all I've got. If nobody else wants to pick up on that, that's fine. So a motion then to adjourn. Moved by Pearson, seconded by J.P. Danko. All in favor?
Did you do the OP list? Yeah.